Ladies and gentlemen, the conference will now begin. Please take your seats. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 2024 ReSAKSS Annual Conference under the theme Advancing the Climate and Bioeconomy Agenda in Africa for Resilient and Sustainable Agri-Food Systems. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Dr. Laye Boutake, Director of Communication and Outreach at Academia 2063, to set the mood of the conference.
Bonjour, Rabat. Good afternoon, Rabat.
Good afternoon, Rabat.
That's right. I am Laye Boutake, Director of Communication and Outreach for Academia 2063, and delighted and honored to be your MC for the occasion. So, to get some adrenaline pumping in the room, I would like to invite each and every one of us to give out a thunderous round of applause to acknowledge everyone here present today. So over the next 2 days, we will be debating the theme Advancing the Climate and Bioeconomy Agenda in Africa for Resilient and Sustainable Agri-Food Systems. And this is a theme of the 16th edition of the ReSAKSS Annual Trends and Outlook Report, which we will be unveiling over the course of this conference. We kicked off this morning with 4 side events on strategic topics related to the ATOR theme. And we heard from experts on these topics of strategic relevance to the conference theme. Now we are getting ready to kick off the official opening of the 2024 edition of the ReSAKSS Annual Conference. You will be hearing from authors and contributors to the 2024 Annual Trends and Outlook Report through presentations, followed by panel sessions where other stakeholders will be invited to weigh in on the issues. And then on day 3 of the conference, we will have the big review of the 2024 Annual Trends and Outlook Report, which will be a culmination of the discussions we would have held over the course of these 3 days. So it will be a crescendo of sorts, and we are hoping that each and every one of you will play your partition seamlessly. We are live streaming this event on YouTube through the Academia 2063 and Policy Center for the New South channels. And simultaneous interpretation, as you have heard, is available in English and French. If you haven't already, please pick up your headset from the registration desk. It's been 1 year of preparation for this very important conference. And now we are finally live for the 2024 ReSAKSS Annual Trends and Outlook Report ReSAKSS Annual Conference, where we will be launching the 2024 ReSAKSS Annual Trends and Outlook Report. And I can't wait. With that, let the session begin.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will now proceed to the opening remarks. Please join me in welcoming to the stage the chairperson of this session, Dr. Karim Lainawi, Executive President of the Policy Center for the New South. J'ai annoncé le président. And now, please welcome to the stage our speakers for this session. His Excellency Dr. Mohammed Sadiqi, Minister of Agriculture, Maritime Fisheries, Rural Development, Water and Forests, Kingdom of Morocco. Her Excellency Dr. Assia bin Saleh Alawi, Ambassador at Large to His Majesty the King of Morocco and co-chair of Malabo Montpellier Forum. Dr. Ousmane Badiane, Executive Chairperson at Academia 2063. Dr. Christy Cook, Acting Division Director of Policy and Strategy Division, Office of Feed the Future Policy, Analysis and Engagement, Bureau of Resilience, Environment and Food Security at the U.S. Agency of International Development.
Anna, vous me présentez pas, Yek. En tout cas, welcome. Shall we do this in English? English is good? Okay. So, welcome to all of you here at the Policy Center. And let me also, of course, thank our partners, Ousmane and his team at ReSAKSS, for the great job they do about the promotion of agriculture in Africa. Let me also thank the African Union that's been partnering with us and ReSAKSS in organizing this, and also all of you for being here, and Minister Sadiqi as well. Many thanks for taking the time to join us here in an academic and policy-oriented institutions, ReSAKSS, Policy Center, and the African Union in trying to understand the challenges of agriculture. And you'll tell us a bit more about recent challenges. On our side, we've been, of course, working for several years on this issue, and we crossed paths with Ousmane several times. There are huge opportunities for Africa in this sector, but at the same time, enormous challenges would have not been resolved over the years. I think we've been, talking about technology, why it doesn't flow, the management of water, losses, export markets, productivity. They are sort of long sea snakes, serpents de mer, that have been around, and we have not been able to catch the head or to catch the tail, and it's a bit frustrating, but at the same time, this is what we try to do in academic circles, and I think we have a passion for that, and particularly our friends at ReSAKSS, which specialized 100% on this sector. At the Policy Center, we do much broader. We cover much broader topics, in particular, which are actually also linked to that: industrial policies, trade, macroeconomic management. It's all interlinked. So we are very happy to have you here with us, and very glad to our friends here. And we have a great lineup for this introductory panel, which I will call on gradually. So we start with you, Ousmane, and then I'll follow the flow. So Ousmane Badiane, please welcome him here.
Good afternoon, Your Excellency, Dr. Sadiqi, Madam Ambassador, Assia bin Saleh Alawi, Christy, Dr. Cook from USAID, Karim, and those who are not in the room here, including the Commissioner, Joseph Asako, and her representative in the room here, Dr. Godfrey Bahigwa, whom I don't see. It's a pleasure to welcome all of you here, and we are happy that, Your Excellencies, you find time to come and join us here. We feel at home as Academia 2063. Right here on the podium, we have Ambassador Alawi, who is co-chair of the Malabo Montpellier Forum, and Karim Ainawi, who is a member of the Malabo Montpellier panel. So Academia 2063 has two of the best minds in Africa working with us and from here in Morocco. So we are happy and honored to have you among ourselves. We're also happy to have Dr. Christy Cook here for the long-standing working relationship with USAID, the trust and confidence. We have our colleagues here from the UN organizations, in particular IFAD, but then the many African universities and research centers who are here with us. The ReSAKSS conference, Your Excellency, is for us the opportunity to present one of our main flagship, 1 out of 4. And this one, the annual Trends and Outlook report, is the formal M&E report for the Comprehensive Africa Agriculture Development Program. Every year, we select a feature topic in addition to the numbers that show progress across the continent. And the topic for this year is particularly important. It's at the nexus between bioeconomy and climate change and adaptation, looking forward into the next 10 years. And it's timely because now African countries are thinking about how to align, adjust, and refine the CAADP agenda for the next 10 years. I think over the next 2 days and a half, we will hear a lot around climate change, the bioeconomy, environmental risks, adaptations, mitigation, and the like, all rich research carried out not just by researchers at Academia 2063, but across Africa and the globe. So thank you for all of you who are here with us today, making time for this, I think it's about 17th session of the ReSAKSS conference. We appreciate your time and your company, and hopefully you'll find this being time worth and well spent. Thank you again to all of you, and welcome to the 2024 ReSAKSS conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Ousmane. So thank you, thank you, Dr. Ousmane Badiane. Let us have now Madame Christy Cook, please. The floor is yours.
There it is. Greetings to everyone. I think it's appropriate that I am beginning this illustrious panel, being from USAID. Greetings to Her Excellency Aloui, and to His Excellency Siddiqui, the Minister. Also to Commissioner Joseph Asako from AUC, and Godfrey in the panel, Godfrey Bahigwa, who is representing her, and to our host, Dr. Ainawi, who's with the Policy Center for the New South Director. Ousmane, thank you as well, and thank you to all of you. I hope I get a chance to meet you over the next 2 days. So thanks for the invitation to open this conference. USAID has participated many times over the past years, given our long relationship, as Ousmane mentioned, on the regional strategic analysis and knowledge support system with the African Union and with Academia 2063, before it was Academia 2063. It's really a true pleasure to be here in person for this conference in 2024. And in this amazing country. My first visit to Morocco as well, so it's a real privilege. So USAID has proudly supported the African Union's flagship CAADP for more than 20 years now. Many of you will probably remember our beginning point with that. CAADP has set the waypoints for Africa's agricultural transformation pathway, and I think it's a pretty clear expression of the continent's ownership for its vision of food security. We've also been proud to support ReSAKSS for 18 years. ever since it was established in 2006 to provide CADUP with the evidence and analysis necessary to advance the agenda. So ReSAKSS is really a special system. It's served several critical purposes. We've been proponents of ReSAKSS because of its extensive network, evidenced here. Quality analytical work, also evidenced here, and its service to the generation of evidence for the continent. But importantly, I think ReSAKSS provides the backbone of the mutual accountability framework that helps to spur evidence to action. ReSAKSS helps to provide the evidence on the progress toward commitments, and importantly, where more work is needed. So CADUP is designed by Africa for Africa, and it is its research bodies, such as ReSAKSS and Academia 2063, and universities and policy research institutes that provide the evidence and offer accountability. So now as we stand at the start of a new decade for CADUP, Godfrey thinks it's taken, he can't wait for that decade to start. In partnership with the African Union, we're providing the evidence and analysis to enable policymakers to identify a new set of goals and commitments. And we're going to hear more about that in day 3. So this year, the conference is addressing timely and relevant themes with the ATOR and other experts. Adaptation and mitigation are critical topics for African food systems, with changing rainfall patterns, record-breaking temperatures, and a historic drought currently in key food basket regions, particularly in the South, are already taking their toll on continental food security this year. So agricultural practices and policies will inevitably need to adapt to those new realities. The work of ReSAKSS and its partners, here in the room and elsewhere, will contribute toward more meaningful dialogue and solutions. So I look forward to the evidence, thought-provoking analysis that'll be presented this week, and personally learning more about the challenges and opportunities facing Africa's food systems, the methodologies, the data, and the bioeconomy. And my particular thanks to the Policy Center for the New South, the African Union, Academia 2063, and all others who are providing facilities and support to create an opportunity for this propitious dialogue. Over to you, Doc.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Cook. And then now we have Madam Assia Ben Salah Halawi. Please, the floor is yours for those introductory remarks.
What happened? I'm losing some of my stuff. No problem, I'll find it. Excellency Minister Siddiqui, Dr. Cook, Excellency Josepha Seko, my friends, Osman and Karim, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. Good afternoon. It takes me a great pride to take the floor in my own country, the Kingdom of Morocco, to address an important audience on a serious topic at a critical time for Africa. From the nature of my work, I get involved in whichever way I can in conversations on key development issues. I'm grateful to have been given the opportunity by Academia 2063, the Policy Center of the New South, and the African Union, to share a few messages with the participants in this high-profile conference. Just 10 quick messages, if you allow me. First, this conference could not be timelier. The Climate Week's theme, It's Time, focused recently in New York on the urgency of transforming energy systems, tripling renewable capacity and doubling energy efficiency to meet the climate targets, while the International Food Waste Awareness Day on 29th of September brought into the limelight on the 29th of September one of the biggest climate culprits that most can agree on, food waste, half of which is produced at home. Message 2, first think first, Let's get clear on this and stop beating around the bush. Climate change is not a hoax. It is happening right under our watch. It is offsetting the hard-earned results from our decades of efforts to transform agri-food systems. It's time, indeed. From droughts to floods, heat waves, Africa is theater of severe manifestations of a changing climate. Associated risks and vulnerabilities in African agri-food systems are serious thorns in our quest for building resilient agri-food systems. The increasingly high frequency of the occurrences of climate-induced shocks signals more uncertain future for our planet. Not a single part in this continent had been spared. We are all in it and can no longer live in denial of this hard reality. Climate change is here to stay. We will have to deal with it or perish. The impact of climate change on African economies and opportunities for agri-food systems transformation has been analyzed in several works, including in the current edition of the ETA we will be launching, which is certainly a valuable guide for action. 3, we cannot fold our hands and watch as climate change destroys livelihoods. It's time indeed to act, and to act boldly. Yes, climate change is a reality of our time which cannot be overstated. At least one good thing is that tested solutions to some of its manifestations exist. They have been profiled in great details. Some are within our immediate reach. But how much are we aware of these? Adaptation efforts to climate change in Africa agriculture have some strategies to be financed, and innovatively so. The effectiveness as well as the challenges they face need to be discussed and better understood. 4, to cope with this paradigm shift, efforts are for sure required for education research to address the loopholes, the shortfalls, and address all the gaps identified. Very timely is therefore this conference to get various players engaged on these important topics with the hope that concrete actions will follow. 5, it's time to embrace bioeconomy as a novel paradigm which opens new doors to us to find new solutions to both existing and emerging challenges as we seek to sustainably transform our agri-food systems while creating more economic opportunities. A catalyst for agri-food systems transformation to greater sustainability, as the FAO put it, bioeconomy is, however, at early stages in most of African countries. There is a need to address shortfalls in bioeconomy education and the gaps in system of research for more multi-benefits bioeconomy practice. 6, however, a nutrition-sensitive circular bioeconomy for food systems transformation in Africa is emerging. Policy solutions have been tried with a great deal of success. What are we waiting for to take those successful stories to scale up? Africa has no options but to act boldly, as I said already, as no cosmetic action will be impactful enough to take to fruition the ambitions we have for our continent and ourselves. 7, we can wonder how much of the knowledge that gets generated on these issues is being actually put into use. This is a serious question. Research, community, and policymakers have no options but to work hand in hand. Action taken by policymakers must be grounded in evidence, while the evidence to act must be as close as possible to grassroots. 8, however, and this message is important, little presence of exact science is observed in the debate to guide public action and nourish the people's reflections. It's time for adopting the necessary integrated approaches and for a new type of decision makers who must be trained to deal with complexity. It's time as well to enhance the capacity of our institutions to deal with complexity and taking seriously all the climate scenarios, which should be the central priority for reorganization, public action. 9, with the needed climate action on one hand and the bioeconomy transition that we must operate, we do have a serious opportunity of mainstreaming environmental sustainability in the post-Malabo agenda of the Comprehensive Africa Agriculture Development Program. The new strategy by African Union must not miss this strategic move. Last but not least, while we are doing all this, let's don't forget a few issues obvious to all, but unfortunately often lost from sight in these hectic times, on top of which is, of course, the issue of inclusion. Where and how are we dealing with the youth, the women, the underprivileged? To me, this matter is absolutely central, and one should not feel apologetic about demanding more equity here. There is a score of research evidence out there disaggregated enough and demonstrating that there are increased vulnerabilities to climate change among youth and women compared to other gender. In fact, unless one is deliberate and intentional about the policy actions that take into account the centrality of the inclusion, we are doomed to fail. As well is important a new and more efficient governance. This is absolutely critical, unfortunately, very much talked about, but not implemented. And above all, for wider sustainability, we need each of us to instill ethics in our behaviors, must get away from overconsumption patterns in order to reach more sober lifestyles for all. It is my sincere hope that this conference will provide a considerable number of pointers to help inform important policy decisions. I'm confident that Africa, endowed with adaptive wisdom, will choose life. In that respect, allow me to conclude with this message of humanity that our continent sends to the rest of the world, expressed by the translation of the beautiful Bantu word Ubuntu, proposed by the Senegalese philosopher Souleymane Bachir Diagne, make humanity together. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ambassador Assia Alaoui. Now we have a short video from Josepha Sako, the African Union Commissioner for Agriculture, Rural Development, Blue Economy, and Sustainable Environment.
His Excellency Dr. Mohamed Sadiki, Minister of Agriculture, Maritime Fishery, Rural Development, and Forestry of the Kingdom of Morocco, High Excellency Dr. Assia Ben Salah Alaoui, Ambassador at Large to the Kingdom of Morocco and co-chair of the Malabo Montpellier Forum, honorable ministers and senior representative of the African countries present here today, senior representative of development partners organization present here today, Dr. Karim, Executive President, Policy Center for the New South, Dr. Ousmane Badiane, Executive Chairperson of Academia 363, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol periods accept my warmest greetings from the African Union's Commercial Department of Agriculture, Rural Development, Bioeconomy, and Sustainable Environment as we kick off the 2024 edition of the ReSAKSS Annual Trends and Outlook report, which is the official monitoring and evaluation report for the Comprehensive Africa Agricultural Development Program, CADEP, has focused on advancing evidence to contribute to Africa's climate action agenda. Africa stands as a pivotal moment in its development trajectory. Climate change is compounding existing and emerging challenges and threatening food security and nutrition, livelihood, and sustainable development. At the same time, a continent rich in biodiversity and natural resources is increasingly recognizing the potential of bioeconomy as a driver of sustainable growth, economic diversification, social transformation, and resilience against the impacts of climate change. The concept of a bioeconomy, which integrates the sustainable use of biological resources into economic system, offers a unique opportunity to harness Africa's ecological wealth for the benefit of its people and the planet. Ladies and gentlemen, after 2 decades of CADEP implementation, Africa has significantly improved in economic and agricultural growth, poverty reduction, nutrition outcome, and agricultural trade expansion. However, challenges persist at the crossroads as Africa nears the end of the 10 years of implementation of the Malabo Declaration. For the past year, under my leadership, we have worked tirelessly to define the post-Malabo agenda for action on CADEP. The CADEP post-Malabo agenda development process is an inclusive, multi-stakeholders effort that has built on 20 years of CADEP success. It addresses emerging challenges like a sustainable food system, climate change, and resilience to shocks. The process has integrated research, evidence-based approach, and dialogue with the RESAKSS and the stakeholders to inform the technical design, drafting, and political mobilization of the next decade's agricultural policy framework, driving Africa's agricultural transformation. I must recognize academians 2063 for the role played in facilitating the data and analytic work stream covering 13 technical working groups. There is a political momentum for the Africa's converging climate change and bioeconomic agenda. The African Union Climate Change and Resilient Development Strategy, the implementation of countries' United Nations Food System Summit National Pathway, and the development of the third generation of countries' national determined contribution, all present an opportune moment for a radical shift in how the agendas of food system, climate change, and economic development are aligned. Like the frameworks I just mentioned, the latest ReSAKSS annual trend and outlook report recognizes the high priority status of climate change on Africa's development agenda and should be leveraged as a policy tool for decision makers. I call on decision makers, including ministers of agriculture and environment across Africa, to explore the research and ensure that evidence remains central to policy action across the continent. Let us keep working to promote dialogue on pathway towards a more comprehensive post-Malabo CADEP agenda that integrates the priority for successful food system transformation towards and agriculture-led broad-based economic transformation across Africa. I wish you an excellent 2024 ReSAKSS conference with sincere wishes for rich and fruitful deliberation. I thank you for your kind attention.
So let us move on now to Minister Sadiqi. Monsieur le ministre, je vous en prie.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed, I would like to thank and warmly the organizers for this invitation to be part of this very important conference to share some ideas. My notes are in French, so I will, my intervention will be in French.
Honorable participants, attendees, ladies and gentlemen, I would like at the outset and say how happy I am to be here with you and share with you a certain number of ideas on an extremely important topic, which relates to this very important conference, a conference that mainly is focusing on the issues that our continent is going through. Thence, the topic of fostering the program on climate and bioeconomy in Africa for resilient and sustainable food security is a thematic which is of utmost importance. It is a topic that has been always topical and that is more and so in our current context, that not only the world is going through, but more particularly that our continent is going through for the last 4 or 5 years, with a public crisis that is getting more and more complex ever since the COVID, through the geopolitical problems, all of which has been compounded by the climate problems that have never been as violent. Indeed, climate changes for more than, or trace back to 40 years now, and for more than 4 decades now, the world is has embarked on a trajectory of change. But living these changes so rapidly, so violently, so quickly, so shortly is unprecedented, nor has it been expected. All the specialists concur in saying that our usual models are not any more effective. Today, you cannot forecast or provide what is going to take place in the next days, let alone the weeks, if not the months to come. So we are really going through a watershed moment that we candidly need to call deregulation, not change. It is a total deregulation, quote unquote, of climate. Africa, hence, is rich. No need to repeat. Biodiversity rich, natural resources rich, but it bears the direct brunt of the impacts of this deregulation, which I call climate change. Our agricultural system, our fisheries resources that support the livelihoods of millions of persons are really severely impacted and threatened today by meteorological extreme weather events and violent events, an increase of temperatures and the degradation of soils and oceans.
Hence the need, as was expressed by my predecessors, hence the need to advance the agenda. The vision is here in Africa, in the African Union, the agenda for climate in Africa, which aims to adapt agricultural practices and food systems in order to limit the impacts of this climate breakdown, while fostering the sustainable use of natural resources. Bioeconomy encompasses the production of goods and services from biological services on a global way by adding to this climate program, these activities will serve as a gateway in this transition. The sustainable bioeconomy in its general and overall design, according all the knowledge and expertise known over the world, could pave the way to a transformation of our economic and agricultural, maritime, and fishing systems, thereby improving the resilience of our food systems and of our communities in the face of climate challenge. It could also help us meet food insecurity issues, but also promote environmental sustainability. I have no doubt that the interactive discussions that will take place through these panels during this conference and during these roundtables on the tetralogy, climate change, the transformation of food systems, bioeconomy, and climate finance, will certainly allow us to identify the key points of the green transition in Africa, as well as the specific and innovative actions needed to accelerate the transformation of our food systems. However, we need to specify that bioeconomy cannot contribute to sustainable development nor ensure the success of green transition without financing. And here I mean adequate financing of measures towards biodiversity and climate adaptation. This is the pillar upon which hinges the sustainability of food systems, and its support is key to ensure a resilient bioeconomy, one that respects natural resources. We need to recall that Africa has received only $30 billion a year for climate adaptation, while its financing needs are above $277 billion, if memory serves me correctly. Moreover, financing is not always adapted to African realities. They are always assorted to a certain number of conditions, which makes things more difficult. Only innovative financing that target local initiatives and that inclusively respond to the climate concerns of Africa will contribute to the protection of our natural resources and to the strengthening of our food systems resilience and the strengthening of our rural and coastal communities. Ladies and gentlemen, the experience of the Kingdom of Morocco in farming, agriculture, which has been strengthened in the Generation Green initiative launched by His Majesty the King in 2020, based on the analysis and the assessment of the Green Morocco plan. This strategy illustrates how the transformation of our food system is based on sustainable farming practices. By placing human beings at the heart of our concerns, this approach also strengthens the resilience of local communities in the face of climate change while ensuring the sustainability of our agriculture. And this is based on the following equation: producing more with less in terms of resources, especially when it comes to water resources and soil resources. Several farming practices which are widespread in Morocco, direct seeding, drop irrigation, the development of resilient crops in the face of climate change, agroforestry, the development of organic farming. All those are specific examples that demonstrate the efficient management of our natural resources, and this is the cornerstone of the bioeconomy. Over the 3 to 4 past 5 years, we have faced a test to see whether we are on our way to solving this equation by doing more with less in terms of resources. What we are producing currently is a miracle, and I can give you a few figures. We are in one of the most vulnerable spots in the world in terms of drought and climate change. And hence, irrigation has been a strategic choice, strategically. And based on the governance of water, we used to have 3.7 million liters of water in the irrigated area. So 3.7 billion as an average is what is enshrined in the plan, with a goal of reaching 5. But over the last years, we've reached only 1 billion. And this year, we're below 700 million. And thank Lord be praised, we have witnessed rainfall in the past few months. And we have produced this with this quantity of water, no more than that. And we still have some water in our aquifers in some regions, thankfully. There is no other method to solve this equation than science, technology, and innovation, and this is paramount. These practices are not one-off responses to these challenges, but they are rather part of a broader approach, a harmonious approach between our climate programs and our bioeconomy programs. By adopting such approaches, we guarantee the sustainability and resilience of our food system, and we align our national efforts with global efforts in terms of food security and energy or environmental transition. Morocco bets on sustainable farming and sustainable fishing by respecting natural balances, thereby contributing to the fight against climate change. Beyond domestic actions, the preservation of biodiversity and the achievement of a sustainable bioeconomy can not become a reality without regional, bilateral, and multilateral cooperation. And it's in this spirit that Morocco has been committed, alongside its partners and African brothers, in order to come up with solutions to regional and international challenges facing our planet. As an actor and player in the African Union, Morocco has been promoting active collaboration between African nations in order to harmonize climate and economic policies on the continent. And this is being done while attracting international investments which are necessary for the implementation of these programs. Several initiatives can support these endeavors. For example, the AAA initiative, the adaptation of African agriculture. This is an initiative that was launched during COP22 in Marrakesh, and which is still underway and has been institutionalized as part of a foundation. There is also the Blue Belt initiative for the fishery and maritime sector, which was launched during the same COP. It's being structured, and next week I will receive several counterparts from fishery ministries in Africa as part of a Blue Economy conference, as part of the Blue Initiative. Morocco is convinced that the integration of regional efforts through the sharing of innovation, the strengthening of our capacities to access financing, allow us to better position Africa in international negotiations when it comes to climate and green transition. To conclude, it is paramount to highlight that striking a balance between the economy and the fight against climate change is necessary to guarantee a sustainable future. The transforming of our maritime and agricultural systems depends upon our collective commitment. Therefore, it is essential that our efforts be geared towards a resilient agriculture. We have ambitious goals, and our agriculture need to be supported by strong financing. Morocco has reiterated its commitment to go down that path in order to build a sustainable future. And I wish you every success in this conference, and I thank you for your kind attention. Thank you, Minister. Through these contributions, I see that we all agree as ever, but the question is the implementation. Being at scale, reaching the right scale. And this is not just to say all the right things that we decided to hold this conference, but it's because we concur on a certain number of topics, as was mentioned by Mr. Alaoui, by Mr. Osman. This is the nexus between science, technology, knowledge, public policies, and it's no coincidence that you are here in a broadened ecosystem, an ecosystem that was inspired and created by OCP. We are here also in an academia framework. This is what gives us this firm belief, this shared belief. For Africa, we need to raise our voice. It's a question of narrative, and the Policy Center for the New South does just that. And I think we are all embarked on this momentum, which will ultimately lead to financing, to solutions at the right scale in the face of the current challenges. We are much committed to development financing, because part of that financing should go to agriculture and the support of climate transition. And I invite you to have a look at a new handbook for policy making published on our website. Successes and Failures in Agricultural Policy is the title. It's based on 25 experiences from several countries. It deals with governance, institutional management, the relationship between science and what happens on the ground. So it's one of our senior fellows that has authored this handbook, and it's free of charge. It's not the case for all our handbooks. And it doesn't only deal with Africa, but with other continents as well. Thank you so much. Thank you for your generosity. Thank you for taking the time. I think we can take a photo and free the space for the next session. Thank you.
Happy to be here again to start the next section of the conference with a short keynote before Dr. Ogunse Wambo comes to present the main highlights of the report of this year. The report is broad and deep, actually, if you look at it. And so are the topics that are covered in the report. From agriculture and greenhouse gas emissions, the vulnerability, a response to it, bioeconomy, climate finance, they're touching all the important part of the agenda. We know that agriculture is extremely central to climate change in Africa, both in terms of the impact of climate change at the broader economic level. Our numbers say that about 8% of the impact of climate change at the macro level in the typical African countries goes through agriculture. Whether you're talking about GDP growth, employment, poverty, and so on, the main trigger is through agriculture. We also, of course, know that agriculture is, in most African countries, if you include forestry and others, the leading source of greenhouse gas emissions. So therefore, agriculture is both at the receiving end and at the giving. And therefore, it's extremely important that we understand those dynamics. But more importantly, the many wins you can have, actually by mitigating or by adapting, you mitigate, or you can, by mitigating, you can adapt. There are very few sectors that will give you that. Often a sector is heavier on the adaptation side or the mitigation side, but agriculture is important in both of these ways. But also thinking about agriculture, we have to project what climate change can mean for the sector moving forward. We just launched another flagship of Academia 2063, I think 3 weeks ago, on trade, that look at the nexus between trade and climate change, how much emissions embedded in our trade flows, the carbon footprint, the virtual way of trading water, how much water is embedded in what we exchange, and more importantly, water scarcity in the future and heat stress in the future. All of that together are going to shape a completely different environment for agriculture as we move forward. Not just for agriculture, but for our economies as well. If we remember what I just said, that 80% of the impact of climate change in our economies works through agriculture. So it's extremely important for us to understand this nexus and know how we can run a climate agenda that can help African countries deal with climate change as it comes. Doing that will require a lot of things, and you'll see some of it in this report. The possibility to understand the spatial distribution of emissions, being able to track, being able to measure, being able to follow across space, and over time, the emission dynamics will allow us to fine-tune our interventions to be able to know where we are making progress and we are not, which is extremely important. But also going from there to trying to find responses to vulnerability. Here again, the data to be able to understand how different communities are vulnerable to climate change. The work that you will see in the report is talking about what makes us vulnerable to climate change. Is it exposure or something else? But often it is the inability to adapt to climate change as time goes by that makes our communities the most vulnerable here. And when we talk about that, we talk about adaptation in terms of production processes. And when we talk about adaptation, we're also talking about the financing for the innovations, the science and technology system. We're talking about new ways of doing business that allow us to do things differently, but more importantly, to do things at scale, which is extremely important. That takes us to the issue of climate finance. We know that the global climate finance architecture is geared towards mitigation and little towards adaptation, and even then little towards agriculture. I think that will have to change for African countries to be able to make progress in the climate agenda. When we talk about climate finance, what could be the sources of climate funding for Africa? We know that somebody's talking about ecosystem services. African forests have been providing a lot of service to the global community, yet with very little in returns. If you just were to start with putting a value to African forest resources, putting a value to a forest, to reforest, you will basically unlock a source of important funding that could be channeled into adaptation investments. On the investment side, we're struggling in Africa with conceptualizing, designing bankable investment programs in the adaptation agenda. And I think there are ways of doing that. In past works that we've done at Academia 2063, it is possible to imagine what should be the key interventions in agriculture that will allow an economy to absorb the shocks from climate change in the future. Whether it's in terms of improved crop varieties, sustainable land and water management, irrigation, or other interventions, you can estimate how much it would be and put a tag on it. And that could be the kind of investment you need in agriculture to adapt. If you connect that with how much forest resources you have, and in this case, we have to even innovate, focus on forests in forest areas, but also trees outside of forest zones, which are not actually part of the carbon accounting system. But there are now possibilities to do that. At Academia 2063, we have developed tools and methodologies to use Google Maps, simple Google you have everywhere, to identify and measure trees, the crowns, the height, and so on, so that you can have the carbon sink in there. You can bring all that into the equation, put a value on it, mobilize the resources, and apply it back into all these interventions that are needed in agriculture for us to adapt to climate change. You can do that, the same resources, to go into how you expand now the pot and embrace bioeconomy. We know that bioeconomy requires a lot. The science and technology to innovate for the new products and processes and services that can be created with biomass. Sorry, because they have wired me here, so I'm having these two mics, and I don't want to turn this one off. So the science and technology innovations you need, the skills upgrading and development you need, the partnership with the private sector that you will need, and the market development processes. Some of these climate finance can go into that to allow us to do more with what we have now, to allow our agriculture sector to adapt better, and obviously and hopefully for much more resilient ecosystems and communities. So I very much look forward to the next day and a half, the rich work that you will see. This is really one of my favorite 8 hours, just because of the depth, the breadth of it, but also the timeliness of that. This is a time for me also to say thank you. Thank you to all the authors who have joined in putting together this report. Thank you to the co-editors who worked very hard, tirelessly. Thank you to our communications team. Thank you to all those who have been part of the publication process to get this done. Thank you to our team that helped prepare this conference, from the planning to the travel, to the financing, to the logistics. And a special word of thanks to our colleagues and partners here at the Policy Center for New Thoughts. The logistics have been just really outstanding. The quality of the operation is superb. So a great job all in all, a very, very good partnership, and we're very, very happy with that. So let me here now turn over to Dr. Augustin Wambo-Yamjur, one of the, who is the director of the department at Academia 2063, under which this project is produced, this report is produced, and this conference is organized. So, Augustin, I think it's you now, right? Am I correct? Thank you very much. So, welcome.
Thank you very much. We kindly ask Dr. Ousmane Badiane to remain on stage. Dr. Augustin, the floor is yours.
Merci beaucoup. Bonjour à tout le monde.
Good afternoon. Thank you, everyone. The speaker speaks English. I'll turn to French.
Where should it face? Ah, sorry. Looks like I moved too fast. Yeah. So I'm being given the opportunity to give you an overview of the 2024 Annual Trends and Outlook Report, ATO, as introduced by Dr. Badiane, and also by the previous speakers. The presentation is going to follow this outline. What is the ATO is a question I'm asking from the start, just to make sure that we are all talking about the same thing. I will not spend too much time on the problem that has been almost exhausted by all these key note speakers that we followed, because every single intervention was a keynote speech of its own. So I will not repeat some of them. What is the objective of the ATO? What are the strategic issues covered in the report? I will not be singling out chapters, but we try to cluster them under strategic issues. And then I will touch on how to mainstream, on avenues to mainstream climate change and bioeconomy into the post-Malabo agenda. I know this has been raised already, and then I will land to finish with the main recommendations from the report. The ATO, the Commissioner Sacco mentioned something about the ATO by saying that this is the official CADEP monitoring and evaluation report. This is how I personally have known ATO so far. That has not changed. It's released annually around this time. Last year it was last week of November. It tracks core CADEP indicators just to make sure that we are able to follow how Africa is doing in terms of progress being made. From 2011, we started focusing on a topical issue every single year. It's a very highly rated report, which is a peer review publication of academia and IFPRI, and that holds IFPRI highest rank of A* for the full report, but also a rank of A for individual chapters. So it's something looked at in the scientific community as an important contribution into the knowledge generation. So why are we having the ATO today on this theme? Because there is a problem. That problem has already been presented. We are aware that climate change is here to stay, as Ambassador Alawi indicated, but also we listened to Honorable Minister. He said something similar. The issue is that the temperature is rising. Storms are getting more severe and deadlier. We are losing species. We have not enough food to feed the growing population. we are having more risk related to health, and the poverty is being created across the continent that is being also reflected in the way people are displaced. So from the pictures there, you see that we have all kinds of scenarios happening at one single place. It was mentioned by one of the speakers that there is not a single region on the continent that is not affected by this climate change, which is no longer a hoax. It's here to stay, so we better deal with it. For this year, Eto, the report is exploring the challenges, as already indicated, that climate crisis is posing to Africa's food system. But it's also looking at the opportunities that a transition to bioeconomy could offer to mitigate and adapt to the adverse impact of climate change. So this is something that is trying to offer more solutions than just theorize on the issues. It tries to highlight the win-win relationship between climate actions and expanding the bioeconomy. Of course, based on lessons learned from the continent and also beyond. You will see in some of the chapters that this is an area where we have dedicated enough time to gather some evidence. The reports try to highlight priority areas for action, including developing an integrated policy approach to mitigate and reverse the negative effects of climate change. Of course, we have to invest in bioeconomy because there is an opportunity to leverage biotechnology and so on and so forth. Lastly, but not least, the report seeks to support the ongoing development and the subsequent implementation of a 10-year comprehensive Africa Agricultural Development Program CADEP strategy by African Union. So we are doing research to help inform action. We are not doing research for the sake of it. So this is like demand-driven research supply. So what is the structure of this report? It has an executive summary, an introduction, a conclusion. More importantly, it has 12 substantive chapters that are really getting into the details, mobilizing the data to help inform the various trends that we are seeing. Then we have 2 invited featured issues in the report, which we'll present in a bit. Now, what are the key issues covered in this report? They could, in a way, be equated to chapters, but not quite. They just give you a quick overview. The report takes a quick look, not a quick look, a deep dive into the various risks and vulnerabilities associated to changing climate. The authors here, cognizant of the fact that because the climate is changing and bringing all kinds of issues, our populations are living at risk of facing all kinds of issues. So they try to look at the various strategies on reducing risk, especially in areas where the risk is known to be very high. We are happy to have the authors of these various chapters in the room. So throughout the next 2 days, you will be able to engage, but they will also be presenting in detail the findings of their research. So one thing that was observed by the authors was that the plan should incorporate important components such as agri-research to develop new varieties and techniques. Because when you are facing a high level of risk and vulnerabilities, you have to make sure that your varieties are able to quickly adapt to changing situations, but also pushing for risk-reducing approaches such as irrigation. The minister gave us a very good example. How do we produce more with less under very extreme conditions? Mechanizations and agroforestry. We cannot continue to do business as usual. Even when we do mechanization, we have to take into account that we are not in a territory that we are in full control. Facing the climate stress, the report took a look at the adaptation actions. It underscores the need for an integrated policy approach to mitigate and reverse the adverse effects of climate change. This was a very thorough analysis of what are the likely impact of climate change between present day and 2050. It might sound like a very long time from now, very far away from now, but it's already here. There are some important policy and investment that will give farmers options from where they can choose on how to adapt to their realities and so on and so forth. Of course, helping them to reduce risk and also increasing their productivity. There are two chapters looking at the impact of climate change. One of them has deliberately opted to have a look at the macroeconomic impact of climate change, but the other one went more micro level, looking at the specific commodities. So on this, here, for instance, having a macroeconomic analysis to the impact of climate change, the GDP is shown to be decreasing because of the changing climate. In the case of Kenya, Mali, Nigeria, Senegal, and Rwanda, all countries were affected negatively. The countries which is the hardest hit is Mali. So we're talking about today, let's say we do business as usual, we continue to behave the way we're behaving now. Imagine 10 years from now, what will happen? A good chunk of the GDP could be wiped out by climate change if nothing happens. So on the specific issues related to commodities, there is a chapter that offers an analysis of climate stress sensitivity of some commodities, and then recommended some investment options in crops that are less sensitive to shocks. For instance, maize, sorghum, and soybean will see greater production boost or a lower loss in Africa than in the other part of the world. So this is what the science is saying. Ambassador Alawi alluded to the fact that we should trust the science. The minister also said it. So this report is really going in that same direction. Groundnut, for instance, and rice will do modestly worse in Africa than in the rest of the world. Wheat potato will suffer greater losses than seen in the other part of the world. So from the findings, we have some very critical policy concerns about whether countries should focus on less sensitive crops or invest more in sensitive crops and generate some varieties that are drought tolerant and so on and so forth. So decision makers have critical choices to make. For them to make those choices, they have to base their decision on evidence. This is what this report is also all about, is helping to bring some science to how this can guide the action. On innovative financing that Usman just mentioned, for adaptation to climate change, the author presented an overview of the current state of climate finance. In looking at the prevailing barriers that hinder the effective mobilization of resources, I think this is giving a very bleak picture of the issues in Africa. It was mentioned by Usman how the challenges of mobilizing the existing resources have been hindering action. Unless something is adjusted there, it will be difficult for us as a continent to really take advantage of the billions that are announced every other COP. So the authors are drawing their attention to the opportunities arising from a range of innovative financing tools and to mobilize additional finance from both public and private sector. But at the very grassroots level, this is something on which we have to get very practical. One of the options is blended finance. How will that work in our context where you have issues of capacity? I think this paper is also looking at that. Lastly, they are offering a detailed description of the key building blocks to a conducive, enabling environment, which is very important if you want to really on exploring methane emissions. Authors offered an assessment of current methane concentrations using cutting-edge technology, remote sensing satellite data, that reveals a significant presence of methane emission throughout the continent. This is not new, but the analysis was able to attach some figures to the assumptions that have been formulated. So the levels of methane emitted into the air vary according to the sowing, growing, or harvesting seasons. So seasonality is very important, but it's more pronounced during the harvesting season, meaning that the agricultural sector has significant contribution to methane emission. We say that agriculture has been blamed for so many things, including for this one. It is true, but there are avenues to adapt and mitigate. So several elements of the report are looking at these various issues. So strategies such as timely harvesting to avoid rainy periods and managing residue can be effective in helping to control emission during that particular season. So they have some highlight here for spatial distribution over methane emission in Mali, for instance, for 2023. I will not go into the detail of this, but the report has several infographics to illustrate the key findings from the paper. As said by several speakers previously, bioeconomy is an avenue that has to be explored further, that has to be harnessed for the opportunities that it's offering. In the context of the global agri-food system, this chapter spent time documenting experiences of expanding bioeconomy in other parts of the world, like Latin America, Southeast Asia, but also documenting experiences in a few African countries, including Uganda, Namibia, and Ghana. This chapter demonstrates that it's very important to have bioeconomy as a top policy priority. This has been done with some figures attached to it. So they are not just making recommendations, they're attaching some dollar value to some of these recommendations. By linking bioeconomy initiatives with entrepreneurship and innovation, there is really opportunity to improve coherence in bioeconomy sustainability objective with climate change and biodiversity. Of course, doing this will involve several players. It will not be a one sector affair. You need to have many people coming in. Natural resources are available. They have to be harnessed to help with the cross-sector collaboration. On nutrition, authors have explored the potential for a nutrition-sensitive circular bioeconomy in transforming African food system. They look at both challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. This chapter is very interesting because it helped to give us an improved understanding, at least for those who have been curious enough to look at the issue earlier. This chapter is helping us to improve our understanding on how harnessing this principle can help us achieve sustainable development goals. Again, they also have some very strong data to back this up. They are also helping to show that, the chapter is also helping to show that that will bring not only economic growth, but that will also help advance health and environmental objectives across the continent, something that we clearly have been struggling with. There are authors who are making a clear business case for bioeconomy. We are happy to have one of the authors in the room. I think you will have an opportunity to further engage with you on this. In 2022, a report by the Malabo-Montpellier panel already paved the way by focusing on nature-based solutions. Taking from there or building from where this report landed, the authors in this edition are suggesting that bioeconomy would be attractive to policymakers, not only because it poses no risk to environment and is appealing to consumers, but clearly for the economic value or opportunities that we see there. And the authors are offering a review of existing opportunities for African countries, and they are convinced that government should embrace it, and they should embrace it and create more opportunities to the economy. A just energy transition is another area where authors in this report offered a very thorough review of the key challenges and pathway if you want to transition from fossil fuel to biomass energy to sustainably develop energy in Africa. The authors are addressing issues of sustainability, but also of creating jobs opportunity for the continent's marginalized population. So there's really something very interesting in this particular chapter, because it's stressing the importance of access to affordable energy options, providing several scenarios on how to look at the same issue as we transition to a greener economy. This chapter is a standing feature of the ATO every single year. This is actually where the whole thing started. Review the progress in CADE process and implementation. When you look at the table here, this is a snapshot of how, as a continent, Africa has been performing, looking at the 7 commitments of Malabo from the first biennial review to the second, to the third, and then to the fourth. So when you look here, the green shows that Africa was on track in achieving the set targets for a particular commitment. But from the first BR, everything went red, meaning that we still have a very long way to go. So the authors here look at the various indicators, they analyze, of course, using the results framework of CADEP, and consider an important number of indicators to be able to give us a picture of where the continent stands. So you will see more details in the report. Now, the issue of mainstreaming climate change and bioeconomy into post-Malabo agenda was repeatedly mentioned. And as we can see, another chapter look at how do we bring this together. The chapter explored the win-win relationship between climate change action and expanding the bioeconomy, of course, with lessons from the continent and beyond, and insisted on the emergency of implementing national climate change and regional climate change initiatives, because it's good to have good plans, but if you don't implement, you are not going to move the needle, you will not help the situation on the ground. So the transition will require clear strategy, aligned with climate change targets and priority. The authors in the report, not necessarily in this chapter, help with some more evidence provided on the target and priority that countries should be setting. So, many recommendations of the ATO. There is a strong call on leaders to embrace African bioeconomy. I'm sweating. Can I have I forgot my... Usually I know myself, I should have planned better. So, the report is making a strong call on leaders to embrace bioeconomy. We started by hammering, quote unquote, on the problems that we are facing, which is the fact that climate is changing. We are struggling to build resilient food systems because we have a very serious challenge that we have to deal with. Let's say we have agreed that it's no longer a hoax, that we have to do something. We have to be intentional and deliberate about embracing this. Leaders have to embrace something that will help them better stand on the way of climate change, preventing climate change from destroying livelihoods. There is potential to transform continent economy with resources that are not found anywhere else. So will we be able to walk the talk? There are some analysis prior to the COP that are suggesting that we have something important in our hand. It's up to us to see how we make sense out of it. The minister mentioned the importance of research. Ambassador Alawi mentioned the importance of research. How much investment are we going to put into R&D to be able to move to a leadership position in modernized global economy in food and energy is something that we have to consider very seriously, because this is within our reach, and we should do more. We are very blessed to have listened to the experience from Morocco. That means that what we are saying here is not impossible. A country has done it. Others can also work toward that direction and see how successful stories can be taken to scale, adapted to their individual context. There is a call for an urgent transition towards green growth. The chapter, as I mentioned, is giving a panorama, a tour d'horizon of the various challenges that are faced, but also different pathways to get there. And in her concluding remarks, Ambassador Alawi said, I was particularly impressed that she was fully aware of this process with the African Union, what Dr. Cook called Godfrey 10 years, the new strategy from 2026 to 2035 cannot miss the opportunity to embrace bioeconomy. It shouldn't be a cosmetic adjustment. It looks like there's really, not that it looks, there is evidence to show that there are really serious opportunities that as a continent we shouldn't miss in embracing bioeconomy to offer additional solutions. So as Usman mentioned, there is a team that work tirelessly behind, including the 3 editors. Dr. Getao Tadesse is in the room. Dr. Catherine Glatzel couldn't travel, but she has been very active behind the scene. Dr. Mumi Savadogo, who is the executive director of CORAF, who recently moved to CORAX from academia, where he officiated as our managing director. So these are the 3 editors who help to structure the report, to make sure that the science is in there, that authors are really generating the quality evidence using rigor in methodology that they are mobilizing. For all this, we have 2 people who help the editors to drive the process, myself, Augustin, the coordinator of ETO, and my colleague Wanderson, who is in the room, who will be making a presentation. So this past, month or 4 weeks were very painful because you are coordinating something that you are not controlling. The bosses here are the authors. We are all aware of the timeline. Everybody commits, but people are just busy. these are very busy researchers that have so many things to do. So you just have to literally help them. You don't need to remind them that it's important. They already know for themselves it's important. We mentioned that individual chapters here are A-rated. They know, but they are very busy. So to get all these together is something that you really have to be dedicated to be able to achieve. So on this, I would like to thank you. I'm leaving you with, we missed one slide here. We had a cover of the ATO that I was keeping for you as a surprise. It looks like it's not showing. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Augustin. We kindly ask you to join the audience. Dr. Ousmane Badiane, the floor is yours to moderate the panel discussion.
All right. I think we have 3 panelists here, don't we? So, okay. We have only 2 chairs. Can we have another one? Okay, thank you. Is Ms. Lubina here now? Okay, very good. All right.
And now, please welcome to the stage our speakers for this session. Dr. Godfrey Bahigwa, Director of Agriculture and Rural Development at the African Union Commission. Ms. Nadine Kbosa, Director of Food Systems Coordination, External Relations and Governance Department at the International Fund for Agricultural Development. And Dr. Nancy Laibuni, Associate Member, Council of Economic Advisors and Executive Office of the President of Kenya.
Karibu.
Dr. Badiane, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Please help me again to welcome our distinguished panelists here for this session. Thank you. Dr. Laibuni, I just understand you just arrived. Oh my God. Did you fly in today from Nairobi? From Paris, okay, okay. Karibu. So we're pleasure. We're happy to have you here with us. So I'll be asking a few questions to our distinguished panelists here around the topic that we've been discussing ever since we started. And I'll be introducing each of them briefly as they ask my questions. If it's okay, Dr. Laibuni, I will start with you. You ready? But also I'm happy to start with Ms. Nadine Kbosa, just to give you a little bit of time. It's definitely going to be lady first, and then Godfrey, sorry for you. Then I'll come back to you. All right. Nadine Kbosa, a good friend of ours, is the Director, Food Systems Coordination, External Relations, and Governance Department at IFAD, who has been working tirelessly over the couple of years or so to help resolve the issue of access to just not climate finance, but finance overall in the African food system. So Nadine, what I was going to ask you first is, as you know, IFAD and yourself have been at the forefront of fighting poverty, IFAD as an organization, especially with smallholder farmers. Can you elaborate, if you may, on a few specific initiatives being driven by IFAD that are helping to promote resilience building in the face of climate change among your target communities? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Ousmane, and good afternoon, everybody. And as you said, I think it's the right word to say relentlessly, and I would apply it to IFAD, moving forward the agenda of small producers, small agro-processors, women and youth, in the agri-food system and the resilience agenda. I say relentlessly because lately I heard somebody telling me that IFAD has been working on small producers, small value chain actors. I mean, don't you want to move on to something else? Isn't it an outdated topic? And so we have to say relentlessly that 50 to 65% of the African workforce is composed of the small farmers, traders, agro-processors, and they produce 70% of our domestic food. Today, they are the frontliners when it comes to climate change. They bear the brunt of the consequences. I'm sure you know better than me. I mean, the World Meteorological Organization say in Africa we experience 1/3 of the death related to climate change. We've lost 30% of agricultural productivity. We've lost 13% of GDP. Our infrastructures are vanishing. And yes, Augustin said we talk about the problems, but it's a reality that we see on TV now every day when we see the floods and the droughts. So what do we do? In IFAD, we try to contribute to the reality that while they face the brunt of the climate change impact, they still receive only 1.7% of the climate finance. It just does not reach this frontline workers, farmers, traders in Africa. So they don't have the resources to adapt. So they die. They lose investment, they lose infrastructure, they lose their field, they lose their crops, and there's nothing to help them build this resilience or to compensate them. So number one, IFAD is a fund dedicated to them, mobilizing resources to basically, originally it was to improve agricultural productivity and rural prosperity. But now 50% of our investment are also dedicated to climate change and adaptation to support them. Working with government, working with local communities, giving them access to training, giving them access to improved seeds, giving them access to inputs, giving access to technology. I mean, you can't control climate events today, but yes, in a certain measure, we can predict them. We know when there's going to be floods. We know when there's going to be droughts. We know when the land is degraded and you should not plant that land. We know through geospatial technology, for example, when these things are going to happen. But this technology is still not inclusive. They don't have access to it. So this is one of the Hello? Yeah, it's back. Also to say thank you. Also to say so, we are also working on what we call with GCF in partnership, green finance credit lines. What does it mean? Is that the banks today say that they are aware that about the biggest risk they are facing in losing the investment is climate. And I think they assess that it's 60% of the risk, but yet there's no financing to help them invest in their business and build resilience. So IFAD has partnered with the Green Climate Fund to basically help local institutions develop what we call green finance, give access to farmers, what are the products they need, making sure that the money is available, they become familiar with technologies, and we are talking of several hundreds of millions of dollars being made available. Usman, I can give you many examples because we have to deal with different tools at the same time. We talk about capacity building, smart agriculture. We talk about access to technology. We talk about access to green financing. We also work with ARC, in emergency response, timely response to assist African risk capacity mechanism of the African Union. How do we react and how do we assist population when disaster happens? So these are the different things on which we are working, making it a reality for the small producers, the women, the youth, tirelessly, because they are the front line, at the front line of the climate change impact in our continent. Thank you.
Thank you for doing that. And thank you for doing that relentlessly and tirelessly. All right, so I will move on to Dr. Bahigwa before I get to Dr. Lumiani. The African Union, your organization, Dr. Bahigwa, carries several hats, several mandates, including leading the continent's efforts to promote climate action. There have been some successes that are recorded across countries. What has been your role in taking those successes here and there to scale? What do you see? How do you go from successes on the ground in some places to scale that is transformative enough for the continent? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Usman. First of all, to thank Academia 2063 for inviting the African Union Commission to be part of this 2024 ReSAKSS annual conference. Yes, at the African Union, as you know, our mandate is to support continental policy formulation, bringing together the voices of different stakeholders to bear. And as you know, currently we are leading the formulation of the 10-year CAADP strategy and action plan. You have heard repeatedly people make reference to this. The successor to the Malabo Declaration. And in trying to develop this new continental strategy, we started by reviewing the commitments in the Malabo Declaration. And one of them was around strengthening resilience for livelihoods and agri-food systems and production systems. Having done that review, and with the support of the work of Academia 2063 and others, we had a specific theme or sub-theme among the 13 technical working groups focusing on climate change and mitigation. And actually, Academia 2063 was the co-convener of that technical working group. And the idea was that over the next 10 years, one of the main things that we must address as a continent are the effects and impacts of climate change on Africa's agri-food systems. You also had earlier on the impacts of climate change on our agri-food systems, especially for currently countries in Southern Africa, Zimbabwe, Malawi, Zambia, I mean prolonged droughts. And in that 10-year strategy, one of the things that we are talking about is ensuring that we address farm-level constraints that farmers are facing. And one of them is water shortage. Water shortage, without addressing availability of water at the farm level, I can tell you all the investment that we hope to get will not yield much. And so in the continental strategy that we are developing, we are saying that governments should invest in ensuring that farmers' issues are addressed at farm level, access to seeds, access to fertilizers, but critically access to water for agricultural production. If we don't address this issue in a meaningful manner, hunger and malnutrition will continue to prevail on this continent. So that is really the key message that I wanted to deliver. Having said that, we also talked about in the document about the need to mobilize financing change actions. And there are several terms that are being used, green finance. Yes, so I'm saying that in the lingo that has been used by previous speakers in this conference, but also in the draft 10-year action plan, there are several new terms that are being used. Green financing, blended financing, and quite frankly, these terms are not exactly clear to the average person. So I'm hoping that through this ReSAKSS conference, but more importantly, post-conference, as we continue to popularize the findings of the 2024 Annual Trends and Outlook Report that will help stakeholders to understand these new terms and how actually they can, governments can be helped to access this financing wherever it may be available. Because we saw from the COP28 that the commitments the international partners make, they rarely come to fruition. So for a 10-year action plan on agri-food systems transformation, how can we make sure that these instruments that are being put in place can actually result in real money coming to Africa to support governments in the implementation of the actions in the 10-year strategy and action plan?
Thank you. Thank you. I missed to say that, but all of you know that Dr. Bahigwa is the Director of Agriculture and Rural Development at the AU Commission that is co-hosting these organizations, this conference with us. Dr. Laibuni, I will now turn to you, if I may. Dr. Nancy Laibuni is Associate Member, Council of Economic Advisors, Executive Office of the President, Republic of Kenya. Thank you for making time to join us here. My first question to you, Doctor, is Kenya, your country, recently hosted an important and successful summit on climate change. What does this mean for Kenya in particular as a regional player committed to the cause of climate change? What is the meaning of having hosted a successful climate change summit for the African continent in Kenya, and how does it translate into something, and what is that something in Kenya? Thank you.
Thank you very much. We first want to appreciate Academia 2063 for inviting us, and together with our colleagues from ReSAKSS, I'm familiar with and worked together with you over the years. Yes, as you have rightly put it, we had the Africa Climate Summit now, I guess, 2 years ago, and we should be planning for another one. But in a nutshell, Kenya has suffered severe droughts. Now our drought cycles are between 2 to 3 years. And before 2022, we had just had 5 seasons where we had a very poor rainfall. And as a result, in 2022, we had a situation where the cost of food was very high, the cost of finance was very high, and if you then go further to see in the backdrop of the Africa Climate Summit, we had what we call the Nairobi Declaration, and there were commitments that were made by African countries that first we need to relook at how we finance or how financing is carried out, a reform in the climate financing architecture. So there is a push towards getting most of us, or all countries, to pay what we'd call a carbon tax based on your ability, and then at the end of the day be able to draw the climate finance that you require based on the projects. But at a country level specifically, what we are doing is we have had hope to be and are working towards being the leaders in the renewable energy or green industrialization as an African country. We have a strategy where we are attracting investments and promoting investments towards green energy and renewable energy, and even going further where we have large scale for geothermal energy extraction, what we are calling green hydrogen, which ends to producing ammonia. And we now have plants in our what we would call our EPZ that are doing that. At a household level, we are also promoting clean cooking, use of LPG gas or using of clean energy. So in that way, we are saying that within our energy transition, or green energy transition, then we are going to have a more resilient and taking into account what the impacts of climate change. That said, when we come into the agricultural sector, we have deliberately decided to take or to promote input subsidies or production subsidies, as we put it. as rightfully said by a colleague from the African Union, we have gone towards where we have now managed 3 seasons of providing input subsidies, and we have seen very high rates of return in terms of production. And we can proudly say that if you look at the inflation in the country right now, it's about 4.6. So the cost of food is going down, but it's because we have managed to increase the supply of food. And we cannot fail to say that the weather in 2023 was better than what we experienced in 2022. So I would say that as a result of going back to the issues of climate change, we recognize that we shall not only be able to ensure that our country is food secure by supporting smallholder farmers, but also are looking towards expanding our infrastructure under irrigation. And there we are looking at having large-scale dams, medium-scale dams, and then what we would call social dams, dams that are going to facilitate or assist communities be able to produce or have micro-irrigation. So what I'm saying is that, in a nutshell, in regard to climate resilience, is that as a country, we are approaching it from an investment angle, where we are saying, let's invest, come together, sit at the table, the various forms of financing that our colleague is talking, whether it's blended finance, whether it is green financing. Let us all have a seat at the table and discuss how we are going to finance our large infrastructure projects in the areas of energy, areas of water, provision for irrigation, water provision for sanitation and household use. For the large infrastructure projects, we have to look at them as investments and not as debt. So the idea is for us African countries, how we're going to organize investments, sit at the table and see how we can provide whatever you will call the kind of financing, whether it is blended or it is green or whichever way. But the idea is that we're looking for investments and not looking for debt. That people then can, for the provision of extraction of geothermal energy, extraction of the transmission lines, so that then as governments we're able to grow and facilitate and sit at the table as equal partners. For the other angle where we need to ensure that we are providing food for the country, we're also looking at it at the same way. For the large dams and irrigation projects, those we look at them as investment projects. Then for the smallholders, which we get a lot of support from IFAD also, because they have some financing in the country, we are seeing that we support our smallholders not only with the inputs, but also with technology. So we have a model that we are calling the Agripreneur model, where we are getting young people who are familiar in the sector to see farming as a business, but to provide their services and see how then they can recoup or look at it as a business, not as just they provide the service for free, but they get a return on the service that they're providing. So I think what the main message I would like to share in regard to the topic that was asked is the Nairobi Africa Summit, was the Nairobi Declaration, which we committed to as African countries. And I think there will be a summit soon where countries are going to report on the levels of achievements towards the declarations that they made during the conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Kenya is very busy after the summit, doing a lot of stuff, so thank you. To my panelists, the next 3 questions are all going to be about the bioeconomy. I'm coming back to that. And I will start with Dr. Bahigwa, and then work back to Dr. Labuni, and then end with my sister Nadine. Godfrey, you know, bioeconomy is a major issue, an emerging agenda that we all hope to see mainstreamed and scaled across the continent. And you have been providing technical leadership in the process of developing the post-Malabo agenda. Where do you see bioeconomy fitting into the strategy and action plan that you intend to launch in January in Kampala? So how do you see the bioeconomy agenda in the next 10 years of CAADP?
Yeah, this one is a hot one. So I'll give my personal views. So in the development of the next 10 years of CADAP, because of the changing environment and the different drivers of change, whether it is climate change, population growth, and so on. So the global community has been thinking hard around how to address issues of food insecurity and malnutrition on the continent, poverty reduction, and so on. And so different terms have emerged. And in this process, I have come across, I think I can remember 3: bioeconomy, agroecology, food sovereignty. All these have been thrown at us in the process of the development of the 10-year CADAP strategy and action plan. And as a political organization, we're always very careful what terms to use with our member states. So what we have done in order not to avoid controversy or lose people along the journey of the developing consensus on the priorities. Because if you're not careful, just one term can derail the whole conversation. And so we have been very careful on the use of new terminologies that may not be that our member states may not be familiar with. So we embrace new knowledge, and quite frankly, I'm here to learn more about bioeconomy. The strategy and action plan is almost ready. We had it presented and validated the the 3rd week of August in Kampala, Uganda. And so at the technical level, we always have consensus on the 6 priority areas or strategic objectives in that action plan. However, we still have one more chance at the STC. STC is a Specialized Technical Committee on Agriculture, Rural Development, Water and Environment that will take place October 23 to 25. It starts with a technical segment where we present the strategy and action plan to senior officials and experts from governments. What I can promise you is that we are going to be introducing to the member states all these new terms and phrases that have come up during the process of formulating the next 10-year action plan. And we receive guidance from them before we can formally adopt them in the language of the 10-year strategy and action plan. So I can promise you that this will be on the agenda at member states. I may request for a slide from Academia 2063, a very concise slide on bioeconomy that I can use to present to our member states and get guidance. But having said that, my summary point here is, whatever the terminology is, the basics of Africa's agriculture are very clear. We must raise ag productivity and production at the farm level. And to do so, there are some basic things that we can do. I said, access to quality seed, access to fertilizers, both organic and inorganic, access to water, and access to agriculture advisor services to our farmers. These are 4 basic things that you need to increase agriculture production and productivity, regardless of the terminology that you use. Okay? So, but we shall be true to our stakeholders and make sure that we introduce these terms and get guidance from our member states so that we can see what to include and what not to include over the next 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bahigwa. Happy to work with you on that. In particular, clearly defining those concepts of food sovereignty, bioeconomy, and agroecology in a way that is very much in line with the development challenges that the continent is facing. So looking forward to that. Let me go to Nadine for my next question, so that Dr. Laibuni to give a little bit of time to reflect on the bioeconomy things, because you really covered quite a lot, maybe even that. Just in case there are a few things that are missing that you didn't cover, to give you the opportunity to come back to that. So Nadine, how much work are you doing? You talk about, of course, what you're doing with the smallholder farmers, and climate change, and so on. But just focusing on the specific point of bioeconomy, what are you doing as IFAD towards promoting bioeconomy, and how much more do you think Africa needs to do to seize the economic opportunities around bioeconomy? Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Usman. I would agree with Godfrey that we need to have a common understanding of what we mean by bioeconomy, to agree on what we need to do about it. And I always try to make difficult concepts simple, because otherwise you can get people to rally with you on common causes. And the way I would, my simple understanding, because I'm also waiting for a simple definition, is that we need, when it comes to agri-food system, is basically to do more with less and waste less. And if you allow me this simple definition, and you ask me what do we do about it and how can we do more, I would say, what have we not done about it? I mean, we talk about water management. At least in the Africa region, could we ever afford to waste water when 95% of the agriculture is rain-fed? I remember I was in a meeting with donors from the Global North, as they call it today, and they were talking about water waste, etc. And I said, we are all connected to rural families. I said, in my family, you cannot waste water, because in the village, it's rain-fed water, not only for agriculture, but to wash, to do the dishes. You don't waste water. The same thing when we talk about agriculture. We've been talking about intensification or extension for years, about protecting the land. So I'm just wondering, are we calling, we like this, something that we know we have to do a different name, or are we giving it a different meaning? So I think we need to clarify that, but in any case, it's about using biotechnologies to do better in these areas. What I would say is that maybe what has changed today is even more urgency to do it. The waste, the natural resource management in the face of climate change. But it's not like, please, we are all from the same part of the world. Let's not fool ourselves that we are discovering this issue of water management, of energy management, of land management, of waste management.
Services that we haven't thought about yet, but that we could. How many of our shrubs and small trees we just walk by every day, they could be turned into millions of dollars of new products and services. So that's where bioeconomy takes us. Something that has little value, or actually was even negative value, because being thrown away, creating waste, or creating insalubrities and other things that you can turn into something positive. Should millet be grown just for the corns, for the grains? What else can we do with it? Cosmetic, pharmaceutical, maybe textile. So if you do the kind of research in there, there's so much more you can get out of what you already have now, right? And that allowed us to get more value of 1 hectare of millet than we had when we're just selling the millet corns, right? And then when you do that, then you're creating jobs, you're creating incomes, you're creating new activities, you're adding to the GDP. So there are opportunities in each and every sector that you look at. That's why we're thinking maybe we're missing something. That's where the bioeconomy comes in. And when you do that, probably there's quite a lot more that you could do out of that biomass and that 1 hectare. Yeah?
Sorry, and I fully agree with you. I think today we have even more knowledge, more technology, so even less excuses to use more or to waste more. So I hope we will have the political will to work on it today, because it's not that we don't have the knowledge and the technologies. It's just the will to make these investments and make a difference. But I can't agree more.
And the awareness sometimes, right? because we don't even know the value that is embedded in all those different things. So I think Dr. Laiboni has thought about the very few things she hasn't mentioned in her first answer. But let me just ask you, as a senior government official, can you tell us more about what your country, beyond what you just told us here, which is going to be hard, but just give it a try, what is it doing to scale up actions on the bioeconomy in particular in Kenya? Thank you.
So thank you. I guess I just concur with what my colleagues have presented. Bioeconomy, to me, when I looked at the topic, I told myself it's a lot of what we've been doing. So it's just the way that we package. And I then asked myself, is it close to circular economy, where you're using everything so that you have in there, and ensuring that you have an end-to-end. I'm falling short of using the word value chain because of the word farm to fork. But nonetheless, as a government, what we are doing is that we are, if you look at the way we have set out to implement our bottom-up agenda, we have said we are going to use a value chain approach where we look at how systems can build onto each other. And we are saying that we want to look just not from the farm to the fork, but how we can create jobs and create incomes along the way at each stage of development. One thing you must recognize in our country is that we have a lot of innovations going on, and we have what we'd call our Science and Technology Center, NACOSTI, which have a draft policy on bioscience. And then we have our Kenya Innovation Center that every year showcases a lot of the innovations. So you'll find that we have colleagues in the space of bio-sustainable textiles, we have biopesticides, we have even feed that is made bioorganically, and we have waste management technology that we're adopting for several, well, could say a good case in example would be the Nairobi city, which is going to have a waste management system that is based on our circular quote-unquote economy. So I'm not sure if circular economy, bioeconomy is the same thing, but yeah, they are going to take the waste and transform it into energy. So all we can say is that we are providing an enabling environment for especially our young people, because they are the ones that have the energy and the space. We host also the PAUSTI, the African Union Center for STEM, Science and Technology at Jomo Kenyatta University. And therefore we can say that as a country we have sufficient resources through our research systems, our education system, to promote the development of bio technology or the bioeconomy, the way you'd put it. Once we get a good definition, I still find the definition very fluid. And we are promoting in the sense that, for instance, we are saying, let us all look at everything within a framework. And a good example we have that it's not necessarily bio, but says, for instance, when you are doing what we'd call our affordable housing, and that is concrete. But nonetheless, for you to have the people building the houses, you need people to eat. So there will be the small lady in the household who will then be able to cook food and go and sell to the workers. These workers will pay her with her income. We'll have the Juakali people, as we call them, the small artisanal workmanships in our country. They're the ones who will produce maybe the handles for the doors or the little metal railings. So we are saying we are creating an economy that feeds in itself. You need to provide water for these households, electricity. So how are you going to provide this electricity? Is it going to be specific? Are you going to use solar, a renewable source of electricity, or are you going to use the grid, or are you going to make a capture? So at the end of the day, I think it's, for us, we are looking at it in a way that we want to create jobs, we want to increase, lower the cost of living, we want to expand the revenue base for our people. So in a nutshell, what I'm saying is that bioeconomy is something that is alive and is with us. We may not have defined it specifically as such, but we are promoting an enabling environment from the research community, the academia, and the industry to be able to implement and invest in the space and the realities that we have of climate change. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Just quick comment on the bioeconomy. I don't know whether Julius Ichuri is somewhere here in the room. I'll just ask him, to have a couple of comments here. But the similarity between talking about bioeconomy and what we have and been doing, it doesn't have to be something new, but it is a matter of scale. For example, we know that we have fisheries. We've been fishing for millennia. Yet you'll have a Department of Fishery, you have a research center on fisheries, you'll have investment in new fleets and sustainability and so on and so forth. You'll even teach at the university about that. That's because you want to go to scale in fisheries. You want to do it better and more and create jobs and so on. Right now, what we're seeing happening in bioeconomy, not just in Africa but globally, is something that we just stumble upon and then do it. Somebody was smart and get something here, somebody there, and so on. But I will organize as an economy, just like we are structuring fisheries. Not saying that people are always going on those little lakes and little oceans and fishing, but we want this to be an industry. So can we get bioeconomy an industry in the sense that we're doing the thinking, we're doing the research, we're creating the new ways of doing stuff, we're improving the way we do stuff, right? And within that, you have circularity. The circularity is just something you're going to discard, is put back into the production process, and it continues. You're lengthening the life of a biomass or resource, right? It is within the bioeconomy, but the bioeconomy can be with something completely new that you're just doing, right? But basically, it just the agenda is don't leave it to chance or haphazards, or a very smart and motivated business person who starts something, but create an ecosystem for it as an economy. Because just like you're growing fisheries or livestock, or the people have been herding for millennia, but you're doing livestock, zoonose disease, and trying to solve those issues, do that with bioeconomy, because then you have a lot of resources in the country, biomass and other resources that you may not be exploiting sufficiently enough. So if you were to have a bioeconomy agenda, you'll get more out of it. And it's not marginal, it can really be huge. So that's, I think, where it's coming from. Doc, do you want to say something before I ask Julius to give us a few examples?
Yeah, just very briefly. So I like my sister's response because she's from a member state, one of my 55 member states, and you can see her hesitancy to use the terminology bioeconomy. Now multiply that by 55, then you know my headache. So, so while we welcome these new concepts and the potential that they have to maximize resource utilization, we have to ensure that we bring our member states on board and make sure that we simplify these terms for them to be able to understand and what they mean in terms of actions or policy change at country level. So bear with us, be patient with us, and support us as we carry on or understand more about these new terminologies and how they can be applied in a practical sense to resolve some of these issues at country level.
Perfect. So this is also the perfect time for me to open up the floor for a few questions. But before, if you want to ask questions to our panelists, please raise your hand so I can see you, and we'll give you the mic. We got about, is it 15, 20 minutes? I just want to see the time here so I can manage as well. We have until 5:20, so about 30 minutes discussion and Q&A. Let me start with just asking Julius to give us a few examples to clarify the bioeconomy issue. And the reason why we're struggling with it is not only here. There are very few countries that have a bioeconomy strategy, and in Africa it's really EAC at the region, South Africa and Namibia. I think Uganda may be starting, or Ghana, right? So it is very, very, very new, but it is very, very, very important. So give us just 2 minutes of comments on that, what you've seen as you develop the strategy for the East African community and also moving to helping Rwanda to do that. What is bioeconomy, and make it concrete for us? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Badian. I've been listening and...
and please just introduce yourself briefly.
Yeah,
for
my
the
name
audience.
is Julius Echuru. I work for the International Center of Insect Physiology and Ecology in Nairobi, Kenya. And I lead a program, regional program called Bioinnovate Africa. And what we do is bioeconomy. Yeah. So, but I've been listening to the conversation, and I like the way you have articulated bioeconomy. Globally, there is still a huge discussion about what's the unifying definition of a bioeconomy. So, different people have different definitions: Latin America, East Africa, Europe, and so on. But our simplest definition, the operational definition, is we say bioeconomy is when we use scientific knowledge to add social and economic value to biological resources in a sustainable way. So that's very simple. So I also agree that it's still fairly new in the continent, but we have examples of countries that are making huge progress. South Africa is one. They established their dedicated bioeconomy strategy in 2013. Namibia just this year. ESC was in 2022, and Kenya was actually the chair of the ESC at that time when they passed the East African Regional Bioeconomy Strategy. But what I want to say is the thinking has evolved. Several countries in Africa had biotechnology policies, they had bioscience policies, and so on. But over time, we noticed that these were not yielding to issues of the outcomes we want, like jobs for the youth, innovation, economic growth, and so on. And now we find that, like Dr. Badian, you explained, if we embrace the bioeconomy as a pathway, then we are more holistic in how we apply this scientific knowledge to our biological resources. So maybe let me stop there, and tomorrow we'll be having a big discussion on this. But if you allow me, for the first time in Nairobi this month, from 23rd to 24th of October, we will be hosting the Global Bioeconomy Summit. It has been held in Germany since 2015, but this is the first time it's getting out of Europe and the first time in Africa, and we are proud as Kenya to be hosting this. And I welcome you to join in this conversation either virtually or in person.
Very good, thank you. As you were just speaking, I was looking at bioeconomies, perhaps not some of those things that you don't take or leave. You take it or somebody else take it. I can give you an example. We often complain about exporting raw materials and then buying ready products back, right? Imagine another country, using the example of millet, has developed new technical ways of producing silk out of millet stems. You'll see us exporting our millet stems to that country to produce silk and sell back to us, right? So that you have those kind of things, right? It's basically really using science to create wealth as you go. And then for that, you may not know the product now, but because you're inquisitive and you're searching, you'll find new ways of doing new things as you go. So let me take the first comment and questions here, and then go to Wale. Thank you.
Bonjour. Could you please introduce yourself? Amin Banjaloun is my name. I've studied in Toulouse, mathematics, IT, and some management to learn how to speak Moneyese, because without money there are no projects. Well, after a long career in the corporate world and the business development, today I am working on the integration of growth in rural economies and territories through, rightly, innovation. And to illustrate this very concept of bioeconomy, I would like and use the following example. Back in 2001, I was called on to chair for Jospin, the then Prime Minister. 5 experts of us, of course, have gone throughout France, which studied the general statements of food. So this touches on the topic of bioeconomy, and I've met there Professor Jean-Claude Flamand, who, after 12 years in genetics research, has set up, of course, a new, which name is La Cogne, that makes the milk with which the Roquefort cheese, French cheese. The Roquefort is fermented today in grottos and caves of the Central Massif. This is a rugged terrain where we cannot, that doesn't lend itself to agriculture. Of course, the technology was used to refine and to mature the cheese, and it made it possible, of course, to set up a U, which is adapted to this territory, to transform its environmental capital in environmental, and hence the bioeconomy for me would be, if not is, this link between the environmental capital of a territory, its human capital, and mostly in Africa we are found in social emergency situation where we cannot afford the luxury of having long-term implementation, because we need to also, in passing, solve social, food, and school-related problems. This is, by the same token, why we often, alas, because of such emergency situations, will lack constance in our public policies and continuity, because we are in immediate response to difficult situations, and because of lack of means in also medium to long-term strategies. My very definition, willingly, to bioeconomy would be, for me, the harmonization of science with a territorial reality with respect to environmental capital, a territorial reality, HR-wise, to integrate the very notion of employability and hence of creation of value and inclusion in the generation of value, and of course the marketplace, because agriculture remains a service provision to give a deliverable to an expected market. Thank you. I think this sheds further light on the very concept. Thank you for throwing the light through the Roquefort example. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just want to provide some inputs into the discussion about bioeconomy, and in the course of discussion we also mentioned circular economy. We talk about bioeconomy in the sense of looking at life sciences, life things like agriculture. So that's why we can talk about biotechnology, bioscience, and bio things. So if you look at the CADEP, so how do we, if we were thinking the next declaration, what is the experience now, and how can we bring the experience of bioeconomy into the next agenda? We know that we've been focusing on production, and that has not yielded, because even when we produce so much, we also waste a lot. In fact, it's even said that if we don't increase our land area, we just focus on reducing the losses, we'll still be able to feed the people in the continent. So the bioeconomy comes in there to say that let's reduce the waste that we are having in the course of production and wasting resources. Because when you waste what you have produced, I mean, you are not gaining anything in the first place. So, but circular economy is saying that there are other things about from the biosystems. So when you talk about buildings, constructions, energy systems, so it's a holistic way of looking at issues. So when we talk about circular economy, and circular economy is implicated in the Sustainable Development Goals. When we look at Goal 12, SDG 12, we talk about responsible production and consumption. So how do we ensure, if we bring that to agriculture, what is the responsible production? How do we produce more with less, or produce more with less, actually? So that is what it will be leading us to say we're looking at bioeconomy. But it won't be an indicator to measure per se. It will be an environment that creates that system to function, in that we have invested something in production, now to the process that leads us, because we're talking about agri-food systems that talk about the value chain. In every chain, I hope we are not losing anything. Are we gaining more as we invest less, if we talk about investment. And I've been privileged to be part of a network that is called Africa Circular Economy Research and Policy Network that organizes a circular economy conference every year. So maybe you permit me to say that the next one will be holding in Benin Republic next year, May. We are all invited to learn more about circular economy and circularity. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, Patrick.
Thank you. My name is Patrick Okori. I work with universities. I was listening fairly attentively. I was typing away, trying to take some notes to learn. And two things struck me. One coming from the director and all the other panelists. Simplicity is actually key for learning. Simplicity is also key for adoption. The danger with simplicity, however, is you might lose some level of complexity, which means you end up getting very dilute. So why am I saying this? I think the messaging around the bioresource, the bioeconomy. I'm saying bioresource because a couple of years ago we used to work with Julius on some weird animal called bioresources economy. Over a decade and a half ago. And today it has reared its head. I was hearing it. Looks like it's new, looks like it's old. So the question is, what is it exactly? All I am saying is that I think going forward, the messaging has to be simple, but simple enough not to lose the complexity around it. That's one. Two, I think mine are just comments. Framing all of this within the agri-food system transformations is actually essential because, as the director said, anybody will ask you, what do you want me to do? People are hungry, so I need seed, I need this, I need very simple messaging. But things are more complex than those four simple things of the basic inputs. There's a lot more you have to think about it. So I think going forward, it would be good for an academic or semi-academic group like this, or whatever you want to call it, to make sure that the messaging is simple and clear for the policymakers to understand, but also detailed enough to help anybody who wants to go into the details to follow exactly what you want to do. And that's not an easy task. And that's why I can see the panelists struggle to walk that tough road between being complex and being simple. So that's really what's going on here. And unless we bite that bullet, it's going to be very difficult to use these terminologies. Mine is just a comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Julius. I'm sorry, Patrick. Thank you. Do you have any other comments or questions from the audience? Maybe just the time to say here, the difficulty also can come from the fact that this prefix bio has been attached to a lot of things. That can mean very simple, very basic, and so on and so forth. But in this case, it's very different. Bio comes from biomass, basically, primarily, not from just being biological in what you do and not doing anything modern and so on. On the contrary, bioeconomy calls for high power science to develop new things, right? It is not like you want to go to a very simple, very rudimentary way of production. It's basically value addition to your bioresources. How do you add more value to the bioresources that you have? So it's a bit different than biological agriculture, where you say, I'm not going to use pesticides, I'm going to use fertilizer, I'm going to do it simple way. It's far from that, actually. It may include that, but it's just add value to every environmental resource that you have, every biological resource that you have, add value to it, just like you add value to your raw materials. But it doesn't happen by chance. It happens because you put your focus on it, you have the science, you have the innovations, you have the private sector, you have the infrastructure, you have intellectual property rights, you have the markets, so you can go to scale and do things there. So do we have a couple more questions? If not, maybe I'll go back to my panel. Do you want to have anything you want to say to this, what you've heard? There you go. So let's go with Nadine, and then we'll come to you, Godfrey. Yeah.
Working? Not working? Yes, working. I just wanted to say a final word that, I mean, we'll see if bioeconomy will survive or not as a terminology, but I think, as you said, a job for decision makers, for stakeholders, for the layman or laywoman, is to make a complex concept simple. And it can be simple in the messaging. It doesn't mean that it's not a complex issue. And I would just say that I remember in 2007, I was working for the UN, and the climate change issue came. And you know, we all had to speak about it, and it was a highly scientific issue. People like us could not understand what it was about. So we received a brief saying, listen guys, you have to understand what it is about. This is adaptation, this is mitigation, this is green gas emission, this is sequestration. And we got a brief to say, please don't look silly when you have to talk about it, understand the basic concepts. And I want to say that maybe that will be the tax with bioeconomy. It doesn't mean that climate change is an easy issue. It's very complex, but I think any kid on the street you ask today about climate change, he will tell you what it is. So if bioeconomy has to last, I think that's our task.
We'll get to that. All right, so Director.
I think Nadine copied my message, because that was exactly what I was going to say in the slide which I have requested you to present. I mean, to prepare for me to present to the member states. That's exactly what I want to be in that slide, so that I don't look, you know, unserious or stupid in front of member states. Yeah, so yeah, that was really my message. So thank you for.
So Patrick got us in trouble.
Yes. So
simple yet complex, right?
That's right. Yeah, because as we introduce these terminologies, we really need to be careful that we are providing something that is communicated simply, but there is science behind it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, good science behind it. Having said that, just as a commercial, I did talk about the...
To be resilient, we have a very young population in Africa, not only in Kenya, in the whole of Africa. So let's take this opportunity to see how we can improve the science-based innovation space and how we can scale up our innovations. And I think the space of bioeconomy provides us, from the little discussion I've grasped now, it has potential to give us what we are looking for to ensure we have a resilient food system in the continent. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. So please join me to give a round of applause to our panelists. Thank you. Thank you for what you're all doing from wherever you're sitting for the agenda in Africa, whether it's IFAD or the President's Office in Kenya or the African Union. So thank you to all of you. So. Now let me invite Tsitsi Makombe to come to the stage for the concluding remarks of today's session. And before we head to the cocktail reception at 6 o'clock. Tsitsi, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Badian. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Well, I am honored that my colleagues who are organizing this 2024 ReSAKSS Annual Conference asked me to deliver concluding remarks for the conference, even though I'm not an expert on climate change, nor dare I say bioeconomy. Nonetheless, I am very honored, and I'm also just really impressed by the high-quality report, which is the 2024 Annual Trends and Outlook Report that has been unveiled this afternoon, especially through the presentation of my colleague, Dr. Wambo-Yamjo. And as noted by previous speakers, I think this report is really timely for several reasons, right? Climate change is high on the agenda, and also especially in light of this post-Malabo CAADP development process that Dr. Bahigwa has highlighted. And this agenda will soon usher in this 10-year CAADP strategy and action plan, as well as the Kampala Declaration. As my colleague, Dr. Wambo-Yamjo, has shown, the report takes a fresh look at the intersection between climate change, the climate change agenda, and bioeconomy, especially in the context of agri-food system transformation as we work to contribute towards resilient and sustainable agri-food systems on the African continent. And ensuring resilient and sustainable agri-food system is very much in line with the CAADP vision and, of course, the new 10-year CAADP strategy and action plan. Thus, in my view, this 2024 Annual Trends and Outlook report provides a wealth of research evidence that should inform and should guide the anticipated implementation of the CAADP strategy and eventual Kampala Declaration. Ladies and gentlemen, the 2024 ATO started by reminding all of us by underscoring the growing and intensifying effects of climate change on Africa's agri-food systems. These negative impacts are highlighted in the report, and that were highlighted by several of our esteemed speakers today, underscored the need to strengthen the ability of countries, communities to anticipate, absorb, and adapt to the effects of climate change, as they work to effectively transform African agricultural food systems. Some of the key findings and policy recommendations in the report that, in my view, should inform the CAADP implementation agenda going forward include the need to better integrate and align climate action with the agri-food system transformation agenda to help achieve those resilient and sustainable agri-food systems that are envisioned under CAADP. Also, there's need to integrate the bioeconomy with climate action and agri-food systems transformation as part of addressing the complex challenges and harnessing the opportunities that face agri-food systems in Africa today. This is going to require employing bioeconomy strategies that leverage countries' and regions' natural endowments as well as their competitive advantages. This will require linking bioeconomy initiatives with entrepreneurship and technological innovation in bio-based sectors, as well as identifying, adapting, and scaling up bioeconomy best practices. All this will then need to be buttressed by having an enabling policy environment, increased investments, including climate finance, for adaptation to foster innovation, entrepreneurship, partnerships in bioeconomy, climate action, and agri-food systems. Ladies and gentlemen, today's launch of the 2024 ATO on advancing the climate and bioeconomy agenda in Africa is part of Academia 2063's broader engagement on these subjects of climate change and also its growing engagement on the topic of bioeconomy. It was highlighted earlier, in 2022, Academia 2063 published its Malabo-Montpellier panel report that was on policy innovations for advancing Africa's bioeconomy. This report outlined key ingredients for advancing Africa's bioeconomy while drawing from the experiences of countries that actually can be considered as being at the forefront of developing their bioeconomies. They were mentioned here, I think, by Dr. Badian, including Namibia, Ghana, South Africa, and to some extent, Uganda. And on climate, in partnership with the African Union Commission, country stakeholders and other partners, Academia 2063 has been supporting USAID's Comprehensive Action for Climate Change Initiative, CACI, by helping selected countries with data and analytics to accelerate the implementation of their nationally determined contributions as well as national adaptation plans. More recently, as you've heard from various speakers, including Dr. Bahigwa, Academia 2063 has supported the African Union Commission with the post-Malabo agenda development process. This included Academia 2063 leading the mobilization of technical expertise that led the development of an evidence-based Malabo agenda. Part of this process, Academia 2063 convened and led the work of a post-Malabo technical working group that was focused on climate mitigation and adaptation. So as a research organization, this is all to say, as a research organization, Academia 2063 will continue to lead and support Africa's agenda on climate action, bioeconomy, and agri-food systems transformation, including providing the research evidence to inform bioeconomy and climate strategies. So Academia 2063 is very happy to support the AU. Dr. Bahigwa, you were mentioning the PowerPoint. We're happy to do that and beyond. Academia 2063 stands ready to work with different partners, including AUC, the regional economic communities, countries, development partners, farmers groups, civil society organizations, and others in supporting the upcoming implementation of the post-Malabo CAADP agenda and the eventual Kampala CAADP declaration with data and analytics. Academia 2063 also looks forward to engaging in upcoming fora around these issues, including the Global Bioeconomy Summit that was highlighted by Dr. Julia Sekuri that's happening later this October, as well as participating in COP29 later in November, and so on. So ladies and gentlemen, I'll conclude by thanking all our esteemed speakers and panelists who have participated in this opening session. I also want to thank all of you for coming to the 2024 ReSAKSS Annual Conference. I invite you to continue to actively participate in the conference over the next 2 days, as we are going to delve even deeper into the individual chapters of this report that address these issues of climate change and bioeconomy. And on the third day, we'll focus more on reviewing the progress of African countries in implementing the CAADP agenda. So stay tuned. With that, thank you very much for your attention. Have a good evening.
For today, and I will hand over to Lai for last announcements before we break up for the cocktail. Lai, thank you.
Can we have a round of applause for the longest standing chair and moderator? So, day one of the ReSAKSS conference, check, done. So delighted that I can check this off of my to-do list. So thank you, everyone. We've come to the end of day one of the 2024 ReSAKSS conference. As it was announced earlier, we will be heading to a cocktail just here next to the registration desk, where we will have some time to network before we head back to the hotel. And tomorrow we shall reconvene here at 8:45 a.m. to kick off plenary session 2 of the ReSAKSS conference. So we will be kicking off at 8:45 to get into climate change impacts and opportunities in African agri-food systems. So we look forward to kicking off tomorrow with you. As you know, we are organizing this meeting as Academia 2063 in partnership with AUC Derby and the Policy Center for the New South. I would just like to give a shout out to our colleagues at the Policy Center for the New South who have helped us to produce this event seamlessly. So thank you very much for all the support. Round of applause for them. With that, I think we can call it a day and head to the cocktail. But before that, we would like to invite everyone on stage for a group photo. Over to you, Lavoie. See you at the cocktail.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attention. We have now